Hello friends, welcome to Star Explainer. Tales of Herding Gods Part 343 and 344 explains based on novel. So let's start explanation. The sound of the coffin breaking through water could be heard, and following it was the sound of chains coiling. The coffin came to a still instantly. Within the coffin, Qin Mu's heart stirred. He knew immediately that the coffin had left the ancient well and was locked down by the chains. The coffin was about to open. Yang instantly put away her red lantern and looked around her. Suddenly, an opening in the shape of a square appeared above them. Rays of light poured in from above, and the surroundings could now be seen faintly. "I see you." Dragon King Qian's big head waved his green dragon beard and chased after Xing'an with great happiness. Qin Mu also looked around, trying to find the dragon Qilin. He felt a slight sense of uneasiness. The dragon Qilin couldn't really have been eaten by Dragon King Qian, right? At this instant, Yang found the dragon Qilin. Over there. With that, she transformed into a green sparrow and flew over. Qin Mu looked in the direction she flew, and indeed, he saw the dragon Qilin lying in a corner, asleep. Yang grabbed the dragon Qilin and rushed to the entrance of the coffin, and Qin Mu followed closely behind. Outside the coffin, Qin Mu landed on solid ground. Suddenly, he saw the multicolored rays within Fallen God Valley retreating with great speed. The seals here were now all becoming ineffective. Crap, the blind elder intends to completely destroy this place. Qin Mu immediately made a decision to fly off with Yang. The dragon Qilin had also woken up and quickly revealed his true form. Carrying Qin Mu on him, he hastened his steps and rushed off. The multicolored rays that originally filled every space of the Fallen God Valley had now shrunk, almost instantaneously, into a very small circular dot. Xing'an, Yang Qiling, and Dragon King Qian's huge head dashed out from the coffin, attempting to escape out of the valley. Only Dragon King Qian's head wasn't escaping, but it was pursuing them with a wide-opened mouth filled with blood. Hum! Brilliant rays of light exploded, and the ancient well and coffin were destroyed in that split second. The chains that locked up the coffin were now breaking chain by chain with a loud rattling noise. The chains that were breaking off bit by bit were hit by the terrifying waves of annihilation, flying off in all directions and past Qin Mu and the others. Qin Mu stood on the dragon Qilin's back and looked behind him. The mountains that had encircled the ancient well and coffin had already been razed to the ground, and the bottomless abyss filled into level ground. The wave had also triggered Founding Emperor's sword skills mark, and rays of brilliant sword light emerged, crossing each other narrowly. It was a frightful sight. The dragon Qilin roared, unleashing a furious cry as he increased his speed to the maximum. He quickly reached the floating bridge, leaping across it and sprinting out of the ruins. He was about to reduce his speed when Qin Mu cried out and said, "Keep running." The dragon Qilin continued running with all his might as Qin Mu turned his head around to look back, only to see that the floating sword at the bridge left behind by Founding Emperor had been struck by the waves of annihilation. The rays of the sword burst out. The multicolored rays outside the valley had already shrunk into a circular dot, and as the sword ray burst out, so did the circular dot. As the saying goes, one raises a dragon for 1,000 years to use in a crucial moment. Qin Mu had never realized that the dragon Qilin could run that fast. He was very comforted. It wasn't in vain that I spent most of my daily expenses on him. Qin Mu didn't usually spend much on a daily basis. No matter where he went in eternal peace, he generally didn't have to pay for any basic necessities. Almost 99% of his money was used on feeding the dragon Qilin. "You can stop now." Qin Mu called out for the dragon Qilin to stop. Turning around to look, he saw that the destructive rays in Fallen God Valley were still moving, but their power was shrinking. Xing'an probably won't die. He has many tricks up his sleeve. It's hard to say for Yang Qiling and Dragon King Qian though. Xing'an's injuries were almost all healed. While taking away the corporeal body of Celestial Venerable Yu, that was created by the celestial heavens spelled trouble for him, it wasn't all that bad. The corporeal body of Celestial Venerable Yu contained many runes of the ancient gods. Structurally, the body had an almost perfect system of divine treasures, and system of celestial palaces, and celestial heavens. It was able to master all the powers of the ancient gods. This was what the beings of the lower bound lacked. However, it was missing the most crucial celestial river divine treasure, and the power of heaven Duke and earth count were also not complete. Furthermore, Celestial Venerable Yu's corporeal body was created based on Tao Master's macroscopic algebra, so it lacked microscopic algebra, and thus ultimately couldn't be considered perfect. Most crucially, Qin Mu had already copied down the runes kept in the top of the Celestial Heavens Guardian Pavilion. When Tao Master Lin Xian and the Eternal Peace Tao sect perfected the computational canon of Supreme Molecule, Qin Mu would be able to use these runes to complete the microscopic algebra structure. It would only then be at its most perfect. Xing'an had only obtained Celestial Venerable Yu's corporeal body. At most, he would be able to learn about it partially. He would still be very far from being able to cultivate the most perfect corporeal body and primordial spirit. Suddenly, Dragon King Qian's enormous head rolled out of Fallen God Valley. It wanted to leap into the air, but it was unable to fly. Evidently, it was greatly damaged. The reanimated brain suddenly stretched its dragon beard out to push against the ground, the strands of the long dragon beard acting like thick and big legs. They held up the big head and started to walk out. I saw you. The huge head stood tall in the air, it was like a moving mountain. He revealed a fatuous smile, sweeping his gaze around his surroundings. As Dragon King Qian moved, the ground and mountains shook. He was looking for something to eat. Qin Mu frowned. If the reanimated Dragon King Qian escaped from this place, it would likely be disastrous when he went around eating people. He had to be eradicated. However, Dragon King Qian wasn't killed in that wave of annihilation, showing that his power was truly terrifying. Dragon King Qian is like Feng Qiuyan, they are both beings of the numinous sky realm. How can I get rid of him? Qin Mu took out the geographical map that Xing'an had given him. He found where he marked the Fallen God Valley and searched around the area. When the primordial realm broke its seal, Xing'an had visited many places, and thus was able to create this geographical map. Qin Mu's eyes brightened as he found a nearby ancient ruins. He thought to himself, luring Dragon King Qian to this ancient ruins and letting the ruins trap him seems to be a good choice. Just as he thought about it, a brilliant light flickered in the far distance. A swallow with a black back and a white belly flew out of the lights, landing on the ground and transforming into Yang Qiling as she stumbled for a bit. Yang Qiling immediately noticed him, and she increased her alertness. Qin Mu revealed a peaceful smile, yet at the same time, his sword pellet silently flew out of his Dao Tai sack and tunneled underground. Yang Qiling hurriedly took out a bare-looking tree branch, which was only 3 inches tall, and stuck it into the ground. The branch immediately rooted itself into the ground, and countless roots started growing furiously and covering the whole underground. The bit above ground continued to branch out, and in no time, it grew into an enormous tree, towering at a few hundred yards in height. The primordial tree's branch. Qin Mu was surprised. He put away the sword pellet and smiled. Sister Yang Qiling, I really want to meet Celestial Emperor. Yang Qiling was at a loss for words. She raised her hand and uprooted the giant tree, which transformed back into a 3-inch tall small branch. Celestial Venerable Mu. Qin Mu quickly waved his hand, signaling the Dragon Qiling to chase after Dragon King Qian. Turning back, he smiled. Sister Yang, you don't have to be so ceremonious. You can just call me Cult Master Qin. The title Celestial Venerable Mu is just a joke. Celestial Emperor may not take it seriously, and neither do I. The people of eternal peace, regardless of friend or foe, address me as Cult Master Qin. Yang Qiling hesitated for a moment. Striding forward to catch up with him, she said, Cult Master Qin, you originally viewed Celestial Emperor as an enemy, even giving his imperial edict to a black demon boar. You avoided him like the plague. So why are you proactively requesting an audience from His Majesty this time? The Dragon Qiling ran in front of Dragon King Tian, and the eyes of this reanimated head immediately shone green. Drooling corpse liquid from his mouth, Dragon King Tian chased after them. Qin Mu replied with a serious expression, I'm not requesting an audience, this is a meeting between equals. If Celestial Emperor still thinks so highly of himself, then there's no need to meet anymore. Yang Qiling frowned slightly. Qin Mu laughed. In the past, Celestial Emperor wanted to control me and dominate me. How could I let him have what he wanted? That's why I avoided him like the plague. If His Majesty could be a cooperator, an ally, then we can meet and have a chat. Yang Qiling sneered. Cult Master Qin, what is your level of cultivation? How dare you try to negotiate with Celestial Emperor? Not to mention you, even if the whole of eternal peace was tied together, they are still not qualified enough to negotiate with His Majesty. Qin Mu smiled slightly. I am Celestial Venerable Mu, and I am the son of Yudu. In my hands, I hold enough power to revive ancient gods, so why can't I negotiate with him? Furthermore, he is dead, and I am alive. Without me acting as a go-between, Earth Count wouldn't have tolerated him. I fear the first one who wants him dead is likely to be Earth Count. With me as the middleman, perhaps Earth Count might even let him go. Since you can't make the decision, you can just ask His Majesty directly then. Yang Qiling hesitated. Gritting her teeth, she replied, I will go back and report this matter to His Majesty. There's no need. Qin Mu's gaze fell onto the halo at the back of her head, and he smiled. Why do you need to go back? Isn't Celestial Emperor constantly surveilling this place through his blessing? Am I right, Your Majesty? Yang Qiling was astonished, and the halo at the back of her head suddenly flickered. A face emerged in the halo, and it spoke calmly, Celestial Venerable Mu, we finally meet. Qin Mu asked the Dragon Qiling to continue luring Dragon King Tian's head, and then he replied, smiling, Dare I ask Your Majesty, are you willing to have a chat with me? The face in the halo was silent for a while. Heavenly Yin World, we will talk it out. Qin Mu's heart jolted slightly, then he nodded and replied, 2 months later, we will meet in Heavenly Yin World. The face in the halo at the back of Yang Qiling's head dissipated like smoke. Yang Qiling sighed in relief, though her gaze was vigilant. Qin Mu smiled gently. Don't guard against him too much, be careful you may die inexplicably. Yang Qiling composed herself and bowed towards him sincerely. Thank you for your advice. Straightening up, she transformed into a swallow and flew off quickly, disappearing without a trace. Qin Mu looked forwards. Another ruin appeared before him, and it was barren and desolate to the point that not even a half-god could be found. Evidently, they were fearful of this place. Hopefully, this place can trap Dragon King Tian. In the Guardian Pavilion of the Celestial Heavens, Tao Master of the Tao sect came to the top level, slashing off a piece of fine jade. Within the jade was the figure of Celestial Venerable Yu that was formed by countless runes. Didn't the Celestial Heavens just create a few Celestial Venerable Yus previously? Celestial Heaven Tao Master shook his head in puzzlement. As he took the fine jade down from the Guardian Pavilion, he said in a low voice, Why do they want to create another one now? Celestial Venerable Hua was waiting downstairs. Upon hearing what he said, he asked, created a few Celestial Venerable Yus. When did this happen? Tao Master hurriedly laughed in reply, saying, "The last time Celestial Venerable came, after you asked me to send Celestial Venerable use runes to the creation divine weapon, a few ancient beings came here saying that they wanted to create a few Celestial Venerable use to play with." Celestial Venerable Hua was taken aback. He laughed coldly. "These old things are all so erratic." Celestial Heaven Tao Master didn't dare to continue further. He smiled and said, "Do I send this jade to the place with the creation divine weapon too?" Celestial Venerable Hua nodded, his gaze flickering. "Who came to ask this from you?" Tao Master replied hurriedly, "Celestial Venerable, give this old man a way out." Celestial Venerable Hua frowned, but didn't push further. "After it's created, send it to my palace." "How many have they created in total?" 9. "If you add the one that was created originally, it's a total of 10. Tao Master laughed. "If Celestial Venerable's one is added in, then there will be 11. Qin Mu Lord Dragon King Tian's gigantic head into the other ruins. Their skeletons were lying everywhere, and the cliffs and ground dripped with blood. It was filled with an ominous aura. As they ventured deeper in, there were more and more white figures emerging from the surroundings. Initially, only 1 or 2 white figures appeared, but after that, more and more emerged, some appearing suddenly on the mountain peaks, some appearing suddenly on land. They looked at the passing group with a dazed expression, yet didn't do anything else. Qin Mu looked at them, yet he couldn't see their faces. "Young master, there's a white-clothed person riding on your neck," Yang whispered. Qin Mu quickly turned his head, yet he couldn't see anything. He couldn't help but feel his hairs stand on their ends. He hurriedly took out a mirror, and, looking at his reflection, he saw that there was really a white figure riding on his neck. An unobservable face was sticking out from behind his neck, looking like it was checking the mirror out. Qin Mu felt goosebumps and looked at the dragon Qilin. There were a few white figures lying on him as well, and they were indistinct in appearance. He looked to Yang, and on her back too was a white figure. It was making a breathing action to the back of her head. Qin Mu turned to Dragon King Tian's big head. There were even more white figures lying on it. "This place is unsuitable to stay in for long." Qin Mu decisively opened the gate of heaven influence, and the dragon Qilin carried them and leaped into it, escaping out of that ruins and into Yudu. The instant they stepped into Yudu, Qin Mu faintly heard indistinct yet piercing screams coming from behind them. He quickly turned around to look, only to see numerous white figures reaching their hands into Yudu from outside the gate of heaven influence. Qin Mu closed the gate of heaven influence. Multiple broken limbs fell from where the gate of heaven influence had disappeared, and they dropped into the dark. The ruins of the primordial realm are truly peculiar. Qin Mu recovered from his shock, while the dragon Qilin and Yang danced about towards the darkness in Yudu. Qin Mu reversed the divine treasures, transforming them into the divine treasures of the devil path. Then he executed the divine art of Yudu to drag them back. Qin Mu laughed. "You can't use your skills here. I will still have to bring you along. Let's not hurry to leave this place. We'll wait for someone to pick us up and take a free boat ride out of here." Yang was puzzled. She looked around and asked curiously, "Where is this free boat ride?" Qin Mu was sure of himself, smiling. "It'll arrive very soon." After a period of waiting, his expression darkened, and he said resentfully, "Is Celestial Venerable you slacking off today? How is he still not appearing? Usually, right after I open the gate of heaven influence, his small boat will come to fetch me. Usually Cult Master stands on my head. Can I stand on Cult Master's head this time?" The dragon Qilin was surprised and delighted. Qin Mu peeled off the willow leaf on the heart of his brows, his consciousness traveling to the Qin word land and transforming into an image of himself upon landing there. Qin Mu questioned, "Earth Count, why didn't Celestial Venerable you come and fetch me today?" Lava Earth Count sensed Qin Mu's true body and replied, "A heaven was destroyed, and there were too many deaths. Celestial Venerable, you headed there to guide the souls of the dead. I see. Could Earth Count send an expert to send me to Lee River Academy? Qin Mu asked. Lava Earth Count looked straight at him. Qin Mu's gaze was full of sincerity. Without changing his expression, he continued, from Yudu, I don't know the way to Lee River Academy. Earth Count was silent for a while before replying, I will escort you there personally, how about that? Qin Mu was elated, he replied immediately, how can this do? He retrieved his consciousness, feeling very pleased with himself. He turned to the Dragon Qilin and Yanga, informing them in a humble tone, Earth Count said he will personally escort us to Lee River Academy. The Dragon Qilin was a little disappointed. At that exact moment, a violent gust of wind blew at them suddenly from the depths of Yudu, sweeping up Qin Mu, the Dragon Qilin, and Yanga. They moved as swift as wind and lightning, tossing and turning, not knowing how far they had already flown. The three of them were giddy and felt thrown into disorder. After the gust of wind was gone, the Dragon Qilin face-planted into a cliff. He was wedged in a cliff just outside of Lee River Academy. Yanga had transformed into a green bird, and was lying with her belly to the sky at the top of the tree on the cliff. Meanwhile, Qin Mu had fallen headfirst into the Lee River. After a short period, the three of them tidied themselves up. Qin Mu's expression was dark, and he said threateningly, today's events stay amongst the three of us. Whoever dares to spread it will be murdered by me. Understand? The Dragon Qilin and Green Sparrow nodded their heads hastily. Qin Mu stared at the Dragon Qilin and said with a benign expression, Fatty Dragon, do you know how Great Sun Sovereign died? The Dragon Qilin quickly replied, Cult Master, I'm very tight-lipped. Look, I have never leaked out any of Patriarch's embarrassing incidents. 2 months later, Qin Mu picked Celestial Venerable Yu up. At the source of the surging river, one could see that today's surging river was no longer flowing out of the broken cliff of the great ruins, but it was flowing through the various worlds. That stream of the celestial river flowed out of the heavens that hung from beyond the sky, rushing downwards and sparkling with jade-like refractions. It was truly spectacular. Qin Mu waited at the source of the surging river for half a day, sitting atop the river's surface, yet the fog in the river didn't appear at all. This should be where Celestial Venerable Ling intercepted the celestial river and executed her divine art. She replaced the substance within the celestial river with herself and demonstrated her breathtaking divine art. Qin Mu stood up and went looking in the heavenly yin world. The sand ships of heavenly yin world filled with metal of heavenly yin were sailing out one by one, following the flow of the celestial river and sailing towards eternal peace. Qin Mu boarded one of the ships to make a query, and the divine arts practitioner, who was guarding the sand ships, replied, It's by order of the Imperial Preceptor for us to come and ship the metal of heavenly yin. Imperial Preceptor said that today's eternal peace is divided, and the cities are struggling to defend themselves, and thus, he wanted us to gather the metal of heavenly yin to forge the sunshot divine cannon. Big cities especially are required to have one sunshot divine cannon. How are you going to deal with the medicinal stone problem? Qin Mu asked. That I do not know. Qin Mu asked again, is the journey safe? The divine arts practitioner replied, Dragon Rearing Sovereign has been leading the Dragon Kings of the river to protect the sand boats along the journey, so it's considered safe. Occasionally, some demons in the river will cause some trouble, and they have destroyed a few boats. Qin Mu nodded and let them leave. In the heavenly yin world, standing before Goddess of Heavenly Yin's Heavenly Yin Palace, that was located on the sea, Qin Mu looked out at the seaside. He saw many divine arts practitioners working hard, scooping sand out of the sea water, fishing out the metal of heavenly yin from the sea, and transporting them to the outside world. There were also a few cities at the seaside. The people of eternal peace and the great ruins lived there, staying away from the chaotic outside world. There were also quite a few divine arts practitioners teaching there, and the area was no longer quiet. For the heavenly yin world to be able to become what it is now, it's not something that I would have expected. Behind Qin Mu, black sand tossed and rolled around, forming the imposing figure of a man. The figure spoke, "Eternal peace is certainly extraordinary. If given time, how great and powerful can you all become? You have even made me feel fearful." Qin Mu turned around, smiling. "I should have long realized that your Majesty's black soul sand was hidden within the heavenly yin world. It was because your Majesty's soul was hidden here that Goddess of Heavenly Yin died. Son of Heaven Yin wanted control over the heavenly yin world, but not because he wanted to go against Goddess of Heavenly Yin. He wanted to look after your Majesty's dispersed soul. It was a pity that Goddess of Heavenly Yin didn't realize this and was thus blindsided by Son of Heaven Yin." Within the surging black soul sand, an indistinct figure could be seen. When it opened its mouth to speak, the black soul sand swelled outwards due to the tremor, yet it was ultimately unable to escape its restraints. "Celestial Venerable Mu revived Goddess of Heavenly Yin, which means that you can also revive me. After you revived Goddess of Heavenly Yin, I realized that my chance was here. A pity that Celestial Venerable Mu being Celestial Venerable Mu, you are truly very difficult, always making a fool out of me." The figure in the black sand continued, "But you weren't wrong. I am, after all, a deceased ancient god. You do have the right to negotiate with me, and the right to ally with me." Qin Mu looked him up and down, asking suddenly, "Who gathered your soul for you?" The figure in the black sand jolted slightly, smiling. "Official, why do you ask that? I founded the technique to revive souls. Whether or not someone gathered your soul for you, it just takes one look for me to know." Qin Mu continued indifferently, "In this world, there aren't many who have the ability to revive ancient gods. In fact, there's only one, and that person is me. However, there are quite a few who can gather souls. Back in the day, I invited 5 people to come here to organize the rune system of the heavenly yin world. They were Yama of Fengdu, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, Shu Xinghua, First Ancestor Human Emperor, and Saint Woodcutter. After they perfected the rune system of heavenly yin world, they marked the runes on the cliff by the sea. Even with the rune system, to be able to deduce the technique of gathering souls would take more than a normal human's capabilities. To gather the soul of a celestial emperor would require an expert of experts even more. Who is this person? Celestial Emperor, who was within the black sand, remained silent. At this moment, from the heavenly yin palace, a figure walked out while smiling. "It's me. Celestial Venerable Mu, it's been a long time since we've met. Do you still remember that moment when you plucked at my compass?" Qin Mu's eyes widened as he looked towards that figure. A sloppy old Daoist walked out. His hair was a mess, and he didn't seem to care about his appearance, and his hand held a compass. Although he looked extremely old and abject, his gaze was extremely brilliant. It looked as though it contained boundless wisdom. Qin Mu took a deep breath and smiled. "Dao Ancestor, it's been a while." The sloppy old Daoist came forward to pay his respects. "Old Daoist of Heaven Alliance pays my respect to Celestial Venerable Mu." Qin Mu's heart jolted, the corners of his eyes twitching. He cried out, "Dao Ancestor, you are also part of the Heaven Alliance." The sloppy old Daoist laughed in reply. "Celestial Venerable Mu must have met the old monk already. He is also one of the founding elders of the Heaven Alliance." Qin Mu felt lightheaded. Brahma Buddha was also part of the Heaven Alliance. One of the incarnations of this Buddha had been staying in the Qin word land in the heart of his brow. Although he was napping, any events that occurred within the Qin word land wouldn't escape him. Could it be that they were also involved in taking control of the celestial heavens? Goddess of Heavenly Yin walked over. "Everyone, please come inside the palace and rest." Qin Mu composed himself. Following her into the Heavenly Yin palace, he turned around. "Fatty Dragon, Sister Yanga, you guys stay outside. Brother you, follow me in. Celestial Venerable Yu followed behind him in a confused manner. Within the palace, everyone sat down casually. There was no distinction between the host and the guests. Qin Mu calmed down, and he thought to himself, at most, we will fall out. I will just merge with Big Brother and transform into a small Earth Count, turning this place into Yudu, then lure Earth Count here to screw them all up. Thinking about it, he revealed a smile and laughed. When Dao Ancestor lured me to the Guardian Pavilion, it truly broadened my perspectives. So when did Dao Ancestor realize that the rune system of the heavenly yin world was already set up? And when did you come searching here? To nurture a disciple like Yang Chiling, it's not something you can achieve in just 1 or 2 years. Even if you revived Celestial Emperor, he too couldn't nurture such a remarkable disciple in such a short period of time. The sloppy old Daoist laughed. Celestial Emperor has one more piece of soul that has yet to disperse. It's hidden in the celestial heavens. This piece of soul of his is also one of the founding elders of the Heaven Alliance, so naturally, he has nurtured many disciples. Qin Mu stared with his eyes wide open. Ancient God Celestial Emperor still had one soul that had yet to be erased, and this soul had even turned into a founding elder of Heaven Alliance. Would this mean that ancient God Celestial Emperor was still undertaking a very high position in the celestial heavens? Beside him were all people that had once killed him and nearly erased his soul completely. These people even seized his position as the Celestial Emperor and took over his corporeal body. His position, his wife, everything no longer belonged to him. He still had to feign civility with these people and call them brothers. He still had to plot against the ancient gods with these people and assist these people in becoming the rulers of the entire universe. He might even be among the experts of the Heaven Alliance that had killed Mother Earth back then. He had also made a move to get rid of Mother Earth, and even groomed a new Mother Earth to replace her. Only then could it explain how the primordial tree had landed in Celestial Emperor's hands, when it was the Heaven Alliance that had gotten rid of Mother Earth. That was because he was situated in the Heaven Alliance, and safeguarding the Heaven Alliance's benefits was safeguarding his own benefits. He even had to slowly plan his resurrection, and plot on how to seize back his authority and position. He had to conspire and borrow the Heaven Alliance's power to recover his own rule, conspiring against the enemies in the Heaven Alliance that had destroyed him. This incident was even stranger than any strange incident Qin Mu had encountered before. It was much more motley and inconceivable to him. Qin Mu couldn't resist himself and burst into laughter. His laughter became louder and louder as it reverberated through the heavenly Yin Palace. He laughed until he was out of breath and laughed until he coughed endlessly. Old and experienced. Cough cough. This is what village chief means by old and experienced. Whatever pleasure, grudges, feuds, and grace are all tactics. Whatever order of the world is just merely your plaything. Whatever justice in this world is also merely a plaything for you to trample upon. His smile vanished, and he said with a smile that was yet not a smile, now I actually feel that the celestial heavens is indescribably hideous, and on the other hand, eternal peace, this tiny little place that is struggling between life and death, is then the true human world, a place where you can feel cold and warmth. The celestial heavens is merely a place to hide dirt and conceal corruption. The old and sloppy Daoist remained silent, as though he had entered a meditative state. Goddess of Heavenly Yin's expression changed slightly, and she examined the apparition of Celestial Emperor in the black soul sand carefully. The figure in the black sand was unmoved and said, in that case, why did Celestial Venerable Mu still want to see me? That is because eternal peace is lacking the time and chance to grow. Qin Mu said, eternal peace needs time. The founding emperor era lasted for 20,000 years and still couldn't change the world. They were wiped out, because the time was too short. It has only been several hundred years for eternal peace, and it already has the trend of being wiped out. I need a helper like Your Majesty to share the pressure. Your Majesty also needs me to help you reconstruct your soul. The figure in the black sand said with a smile, you and I are making use of each other. I have very great authority in the celestial heavens, so I can give eternal peace time. I can let the new and old Mother Earth deal with each other to give eternal peace a chance to survive. However, I feel that if I return to my throne and eternal peace also grows up, eternal peace would instead become a danger to me. Qin Mu said seriously, Your Majesty, do you have another choice? The figure in the black sand said with a smile, I don't. I don't think Your Majesty has any either. Qin Mu said indifferently, Your Majesty, there's still one more condition to reconstruct the souls, which is that I need the power of Heaven Duke and Earth Count. The black sand vibrated, and the man in the sand was silent. Qin Mu said with a smile, I'm not sure about Heaven Duke's side, but I feel it would be a problem on Earth Count's side. If I borrow the power of Earth Count to revive Your Majesty, Earth Count will definitely kill me. The figure in the black sand continued to remain silent. Goddess of Heavenly Yin was faced with a dilemma, and didn't know if she should speak. Back then, to control Earth Count, Celestial Emperor had taken the chance when Earth Count was reincarnated and allowed his son to lead half-gods, laying their hands on the reincarnated Earth Count. The reincarnated Earth Count was called Archo, and he had 3 children. His oldest son and daughter were dropped to their death, and only his youngest daughter was left. When Archo fought his way up to the celestial heavens, she had landed in Celestial Emperor's hands and became a handle for Celestial Emperor to control him. Even though they were a ruler and his minister, the hatred had already been planted. The old and sloppy Daoist gradually opened his eyes and said, the daughter of Earth Count is still alive. She has an extremely high position in the celestial heavens, so there should still be some leeway for him to redeem himself. The figure in the black sand said, there's also Heaven Duke. He might not lend his power to revive me either. Qin Mu's heart jumped. Could Celestial Emperor have also done something similar to Heaven Duke? No wonder Heaven Duke and Earth Count weren't willing to mention this ancient god Celestial Emperor, and detested his conduct. Heaven Duke wasn't even willing to mention that piece of history. You deserve what you get. Qin Mu said, Your Majesty, it might look like you control all the power and are unrivaled in the world, however, when you find yourself utterly isolated and sinking into desperate straits, no one will come to save you. The figure in the black sand gave a snort, but he didn't refute him. Qin Mu said, in that case, could Dao Ancestor convince the daughter of Earth Count, and let her convince Earth Count? As for Heaven Duke's side, I will think of another idea. As for the pressure on eternal peace, could Your Majesty let the new Mother Earth handle it for now? The figure in the black sand sighed again, and his tone was rather unhappy. Qin Mu's gaze twinkled, and he said, there's still one matter, and that is in regards to Celestial Venerable Yu. I want the last strand of Celestial Venerable Yu's soul. Impossible. The figure in the black sand shook his head firmly. The old and sloppy Daoist also shook his head. That's impossible. Celestial Venerable Yu's soul is hidden in the Hall of Fragrance, no one can take him out. This matter. He looked at the figure in the black sand and remained quiet. Qin Mu frowned. This soul belonging to Celestial Venerable Yu was related to the ancient god Celestial Emperor. Back then, when Celestial Venerable Yu was assassinated and died, ancient god Celestial Emperor had given the order to search for Celestial Venerable Yu's soul, however, Earth Count didn't manage to find it. Qin Mu could guess that Celestial Venerable Yu's soul had been shattered, but the broken soul that contained his memory was actually taken away by Celestial Emperor. Only he could hide things from Earth Count. And now that the owner of the celestial heavens had changed, Celestial Venerable Yu's broken soul that was hidden in Hall of Fragrance was interrelated with all the various powers. This wasn't something that ancient God Celestial Emperor and Tao Ancestor could make a decision on. Qin Mu gritted his teeth. Would Celestial Venerable Yu always be so silly from today onwards? In that case, who created the Celestial Venerable Yu that came down from the celestial heavens? He suddenly asked. The figure in the black sand said, which Celestial Venerable Yu do you mean? Qin Mu was stunned. The figure in the black sand smiled and said, the celestial heavens have created numerous versions of Celestial Venerable Yu. These Celestial Venerable Yus have probably gone down into the lower bound. They are doing an experiment to see if the Celestial Venerable Yu they created is perfect or not. As for whose Celestial Venerable Yu you met, that's not something I would know. Furthermore, I also created one. The corners of Qin Mu's eyes twitched, and he looked at Celestial Venerable Yu. He felt a pang of sorrow for him, and yet he also had a murderous intent that he couldn't restrain. Let me ask about one more matter. Qin Mu composed himself and forced a smile. Is Founding Emperor in the celestial heavens? Has he become one of the power wielders in the celestial heavens? After all, he is also one of the founding elders of the Heaven Alliance. The figure in the black sand shook his head. He isn't willing to compromise, and he doesn't want to die, so he has naturally hidden in Carefree Village. The celestial heavens has always been searching for the location of Carefree Village, but we still can't find it even now. Qin Mu was lost in his thoughts, and he finally put down the rock that was weighing on his heart. His eye sockets were slightly damp, and he was slightly moved. This is then Founding Emperor, he said softly with a chuckle and vaporized the tears in his eyes. Founding Emperor said that the more one understood the extraterritorial celestial heavens, the more despair one would feel. He could now feel the emotions of Founding Emperor when he said that. However, he didn't compromise and didn't choose to become one of the power wielders that stood high above. All this while, Founding Emperor was Qin Mu's motivation and role model. Even though there were many misunderstandings, Qin Mu's admiration for him had never broken before. If Founding Emperor was also in the celestial heavens, this kind of blow would probably have crushed him. Qin Mu's mood was much happier, and he stood up with a smile. The talk with Your Majesty will stop here today. I can think of a solution for Heaven Duke's side, but I can only rely on you for Earth Count's side. Your Majesty, I have many matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave now. Brother Yu, let us go. He brought Celestial Venerable Yu out, and the figure in the black sand stopped him. He said with a smile, Celestial Venerable Mu, you have asked me many questions in our talk, and I also have a question I don't understand. Qin Mu stopped in his footsteps. The figure in the black sand asked puzzledly, I don't know what you are pursuing. You have such splendid talent and capabilities, you have a burning curiosity, you are very hardworking, you have many tactics, and you even have the title of Celestial Venerable Mu. Your position is so high that you don't have to do anything for the human world for the celestial heavens to regard you highly. As long as you are willing to, you can head over to the celestial heavens, to be a Celestial Venerable Mu that is high up. However, you are running to and fro in this mortal world and have no qualms in standing against the celestial heavens, to become an enemy of a power that even Founding Emperor felt despair against. He voiced out the puzzlement in his heart again. In that case, what are you pursuing? What do you want to receive? Qin Mu turned his head around, and his gaze sparkled with a pure smile spreading across his face. Your Majesty, the moment you were born, you were the leader, the chief of the entire universe. You aren't immortal, and you have never lived in the mortal world before. You also haven't lived in eternal peace before. He said with a smile, ever since I was young, I have been living in the mortal world. There are too many people that love me and too many people that I love here. Even though they all have small faults, they are all human, they are all adorable people. They aren't gods, and they aren't high up. Of course I know, the gods of the celestial heavens are afraid of these adorable mortals, and so they broke off their divine bridges. When they broke off their future prospects, I knew from then on that it wasn't the mortals that were afraid of the gods, it was the gods that were afraid of the mortals. The figure in the black sand was slightly stunned. The old and sloppy Taoist, who was relaxing with his eyes closed, had now opened his eyes again. When I peed on the god statue with Grandpa blind in the village, I already had no more respect for you gods. When I was still herding cows beside the surging river, I was actually just a cowherd boy with no world-shaking ambition, nor did I have any plans that were universally shocking. I only wanted to herd all the gods, so that these gods were no longer high up. Qin Mu walked out of Heavenly Yin Palace, and his voice rang out. The person herding the cows has to give the cows a rule so that the cows won't run all over the place. To herd the gods, one has to give the gods a rule, to let the gods serve the humans. When they do evil, there will be rules to punish them, there will be new gods to replace them, and these new gods will be born from mortals, not just a power game between gods. Eternal Peace's reform is just like this. The figure in the black sand was silent for a moment before sighing. Asking a tiger for its hide, truly the greatest danger to me. Outside the hall, Qin Mu turned around and smiled radiantly. That's right. However, that is all in the future, we still have to cooperate now. The black sand faded away and vanished. The old and sloppy Taoist stood up and came out of the hall. He walked past Qin Mu and said, "You will fail, you will die. Many people harbored the same dreams as you did, the past celestial emperors of South High Emperor era, founding emperor, celestial venerable Ling, every one of them failed without exception." Qin Mu saw him off and said loudly, "Someone still has to do it. There are things that must be done and things that must not be done, there can't be nothing done." That old Taoist paused in his footsteps, and his body vanished. "Someone still has to do it." Qin Mu muttered to Celestial Venerable Yu beside him, "Right?" Celestial Venerable Yu was perplexed and puzzled. Qin Mu forced a smile and asked again, "Right?" Celestial Venerable Yu couldn't reply to him. Qin Mu looked lost, and he muttered again, "Right?" The dragon Qilin, who was lying in front of the palace, stood up and walked over with his swaying body. "Right?" Qin Mu revealed a smile and happiness filled his heart. Yang looked at the dragon Qilin and said softly, "Why did you say right?" When Patriarch was still alive, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would frequently find him. The dragon Qilin said with a muffled voice, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor frequently had times he was at a loss and was helpless. He would then ask Patriarch if what we did was right. When Patriarch didn't answer, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor would feel an emptiness in his heart. When Patriarch replied right, only then would Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor reveal a smile. Cult Master needs a Tao friend to support him, but it's a pity he doesn't have one. I don't want him to feel sad. Even though the dragon Qilin had merely said a single word, right, Qin Mu still felt as though he had received great encouragement. He was quickly in high spirits again. Yang watched this scene and couldn't help but click her tongue in awe, shoving a spirit pill towards the dragon Qilin. Upon seeing this, the water Qilin was very envious, thinking to himself, when my lord is lost and perplexed, I must say the word right too. This way, I will be able to obtain more food rations. However, it seems like my lord has always been very lost. Goddess of Heavenly Yin sent the group out of Heavenly Yin world solicitously. Before taking her leave, the goddess whispered, Great Wizard, you won't be angry with what I did, right? Celestial Emperor is, after all, His Majesty of us ancient gods. Even though he has done a lot of bad things to the other ancient gods, at the end of everything, he is still not considered evil. When Tao Ancestor sought me out to request the runes of Heavenly Yin world to gather His Majesty's soul, I couldn't reject him. Goddess, you don't have to say anything, I fully understand. Qin Mu smiled. Goddess is mindful of old ties, so it's only natural to make the choice that you did. However, Goddess, you are no longer an ancient god born from heaven and earth. As an ancient god, you are already dead. You are now a whole new life, you are the same as us, we are all life forms after the beginning of the world. Goddess of Heavenly Yin was at a loss of words. Goddess, you are naive. So naive that you don't guard against outsiders, that you don't know why you died, and so naive that you returned to devote yourself to ancient God Celestial Emperor. But did you not think about it before? When you died, a single piece of ancient God Celestial Emperor's soul had already assumed a high position within the Heaven Alliance. Qin Mu bowed as a parting, and with great sincerity, he continued, he didn't stop Son of Heaven Yin from laying his hands on you. Similarly, he also didn't stop the Heaven Alliance from attacking Mother Earth. Goddess, your corporeal body was destroyed. When I revived you, you only had your skin left. After your revival, you are still different from Celestial Emperor. He still has his ancient god corporeal body, he can still become an ancient god. You and him are no longer the same kind of life forms. Goddess of Heavenly Yin revealed a dazed expression as she watched them leave. Qin Mu's voice still echoed in her ear. Goddess, you cannot be so naive anymore. The dragon Qilin used his vital qi to hold on to a huge mirror, carrying the mirror on his back while continuing on the journey. Qin Mu wasn't on his head this time, and the water Qilin followed closely by. Celestial Venerable Yu was also missing. Only Yang was leaping about, busily feeding them spirit pills. This girl would occasionally grab some spirit pills and stick her hand into the mirror. Inside the mirror, Celestial Venerable Yu would open his mouth to receive the spirit pills. Qin Mu was also in the mirror world. He took out a small mirror, and turning his back on the jade scrolls within the mirror, lifted it to see the runes on the jade scrolls. Immediately after, he took out multiple calculation spirit weapons, forming a huge calculation tool and performing calculations relentlessly. He was attempting to fuse Tao Master Lin Xian's perfected computational canon of supreme molecule into it in order to perfect the runes. Celestial Venerable Yu, on the other hand, was lost in thought beside him. His cultivation had reached a bottleneck, he was already at the peak of the spirit embryo realm, and he intended to advance further. Qin Mu hadn't imparted the techniques to open the 5 elements divine treasure to him, and he hadn't taught him how to cultivate. Celestial Venerable Yu hadn't asked him to either, because Qin Mu had told him before that overlord bodies like his would create their own techniques, and figure out their own path. Because of this, Celestial Venerable Yu had stubbornly decided that he would seek out his own path. The dragon Qilin followed the surface of the surging river, traveling to the east. There were many sand ships following the river course on the surging river that were also sailing towards the east. Beneath these huge ships, dragon-rearing sovereign and a few dragon kings revealed their true bodies, swimming through the celestial river and using their power to help speed up the flow of the water and thus the traveling speed of the ships. The metal of Heavenly Yin wasn't uncommon in the Heavenly Yin world, yet it was a rare item in the outside world. There were quite a few robberies along the way. Since the celestial river connected multiple heavens, there were devil gods that came from the heavens to rob the ships. They were fought off by dragon-rearing sovereign and the dragon kings. Qin Mu hadn't asked the dragon Qilin to use his full strength for the journey, so his speed was almost on par with the sand ships beneath them. In addition, the dragon Qilin was content to be able to enjoy spirit pills along the way. Occasionally, dragon kings would fly out from beneath the river surface, and upon realizing that the dragon Qilin was the mount of Qin Mu, they would offer underwater treasures and delicacies. The dragon Qilin rarely ate meat, so he only accepted artifacts like dragon beads, while Yang and the water Qilin were open to offerings of all varieties. A portion of the sand ships sailed to surging River Academy, and started to unload so that the metal of heavenly yin could be refined there. Another portion of the sand ships continued sailing east, going all the way to the sea. The surface of the sea was a lot wider and vaster today as compared to the past. The dragon Qin looked towards the east. The sky picture was unable to cover the surface of the sea, and the sun was actually rising from mid-air instead of the water's surface. Even more peculiar, there were gigantic planets on the surface of the sea. Some had smashed into the sea, revealing half a circular body, while some hung from the sky barrier, looking even more huge in scale. These planets had torn the sky apart, revealing alarming cracks that streaked across the sky. The god who guarded the sky picture had long given up, completely disregarding the damaged sky picture, and not bothering to patch it up. Suddenly, Qin Mu stuck his head out of the mirror. Looking around his surroundings, he was stunned by the sight in front of him. This is the estuary of the surging river. The god guarding the sky picture is really slacking off. This is unbearable to look at. The dragon Qin said, "We have reached the estuary." On the other side of the mirror, Celestial Venerable Yu stuck out his head, looking about curiously. In ancient times, the celestial river would keep flowing and eventually enter the ruins of Ens. Now the celestial river flows into the sea, missing a huge portion. To find the ruins of Ens, I'm afraid it will be extremely difficult. Qin Mu suddenly adjusted the mirror, letting it stand upright. He looked downwards with his body parallel to the surface of the sea, only to see the sand ship forming a fleet and sailing along the coastline in the northern direction. Qin Mu commented, "Without the protection of the Dragon Kings, isn't it dangerous for these sand ships?" As he spoke, enormous green backs emerged from the surface of the sea, looking like islands. They were actually gigantic fish swimming over, protecting the sand ships from all four sides. Enormous black tortoises swam over in the sea as well, accompanying the sand ships as they continued on their way. At this moment, another ship sailed over from a harbor by the shore of the sea. Atop the ship were apparitions that rose into the air, transforming into a long river dam that was constructed from earth, wood, and water. Vertically and horizontally across, the long river dam was almost 800 yards in length. The river spanned several hundred miles. It was a truly grand sight. Several green-backed fish swam towards the apparition, suddenly leaping out of the water and transforming into men and women before boarding the ship. A few enormous black tortoises swam over too, also transforming into human form to board the ship. This level of apparition of water conservancy, earth, and wood is likely the work of Eternal Peace Empire's great Sikong Wei Pingbo. It looks like Eternal Peace's god of water conservancy has assumed personal command to protect the sand ships. Qin Mu took a quick look and said, "The green-backed fish on the sea's surface are of the Qin race, and the black tortoises are of the black tortoise god race." Back then, in the Battle of God-Broken Mountain Range, they were ordained by human Emperor Seal to come forth and assist in battle, and they suffered great casualties. With the help of the god of water conservancy and the god races of the sea, the sand ships won't be in much danger. He felt at ease now, retreating back into the mirror to continue his research. Celestial Venerable Yu crawled out of the mirror. Sitting very convincingly on the water Qilin's head, he turned to Yanga and said, "Sister, don't feed me anymore. I will be cultivating in seclusion for the next few days." Yanga felt uneasy and replied, "Will you starve? Do you want to fill your stomach first?" Celestial Venerable Yu thought about it for a moment. "I should probably fill my stomach first." The dragon Qilin started to speed up, following closely along the coastline and traveling in the northern direction. After almost 20 days of traveling, they finally reached the estuary of the Gold River. During this period, an apparition suddenly occurred one night. The aspect of the celestial bodies in the sky was thrown into disorder, and star power converged into a stream that was visible to the naked eye and tunneled frantically into Celestial Venerable Yu's body. This event continued for several days and nights before it finally came to a stop. Yang Er and the water Qilin decided to wake Celestial Venerable Yu and ask him why this was happening. The dragon Qilin hurriedly stopped them. Blue Fatty is in the stage of comprehending his path, he must not be disturbed. Cult Master said that the state of comprehension is very hard to come by. If one can experience it 1 or 2 times in their lifetime, it is already considered a remarkable feat. The water Qilin asked with suspicion, really? I remember that when my lord opened the spirit embryo divine treasure, he had already comprehended his path. It seemed very easy for him. The dragon Qilin was also a little perplexed. That is what Cult Master said. The dragon Qilin traveled against the estuary, reaching River Tomb, and only then did he put down the mirror from his back. Knocking on the surface of the mirror, he said, Cult Master, we have arrived at River Tomb. Qin Mu jumped out of the mirror and waved his sleeves, putting the mirror in his Daotai sack. Celestial Venerable Yu awoke and said excitedly, Brother, I've opened the second divine treasure. Qin Mu leaped down from the dragon Qilin's head, signaling that they would be walking, and laughed. Which divine treasure did you open? All this while, Qin Mu hadn't taught Celestial Venerable Yu how to open the divine treasures, nor had he taught him any skills or divine arts. He merely let him learn on his own and not cultivate diligently. The eternal peace of today was an era of abundant knowledge, and the skills and divine arts of every academy could be imparted to outsiders. Celestial Venerable Yu had already read the book collections of the Imperial College, Surging River Academy, Heavenly Saint Academy, Li River Academy, and Dao Sect Academy. His knowledge was already incredibly profound, his perspectives and experiences extraordinary. He was superior to the Celestial Venerable Yu of the ancient times by leaps and bounds. Qin Mu had faith that even if Celestial Venerable Yu didn't cultivate the techniques of another, he would still be able to walk out a path of his own. Galaxy Divine Treasure. Celestial Venerable Yu leaped into the air excitedly. I found inspiration when I was viewing the astronomical phenomena. Thus, I opened the galaxy around the spirit embryo. Qin Mu stopped in his tracks, stunned. He probed, Galaxy Divine Treasure. Not 5 elements divine treasure, or 6 directions divine treasure. Celestial Venerable Yu shook his head. Qin Mu was confounded and asked, what does this galaxy divine treasure look like? Celestial Venerable Yu thought for a moment, then opened up his divine treasure to demonstrate it to Qin Mu. Qin Mu looked at his divine treasure, and his head was blank. Celestial Venerable Yu's chubby spirit embryo sat atop the spirit platform, and was surrounded by a boundless galaxy that revolved around him. Most crucially, there was no wall between the divine treasures. Qin Mu shook his head. Inspecting it carefully, he really didn't see a wall between the divine treasures. This meant that Celestial Venerable Yu's spirit embryo divine treasure and galaxy divine treasure were one. Cult Master, Blue Fatty fell into the state of comprehension again when he opened the galaxy divine treasure. The dragon Qilin continued carefully, in addition, when he gets into the state, it goes on for 10 days. Cult Master, actually, I feel that it's not very important whether the overlord body is alpha or beta. Qin Mu couldn't hold his expression together, and he nodded. Fatty Dragon, what you said really makes a lot of sense. I don't know why, but suddenly, I really feel like beating someone up. His expression was unpleasant as he walked towards the manufacturing factories of River Tomb. River Tomb was where Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor had started his work. The River Tomb Academy was also built here, and most of the manufacturing factories of Eternal Peace Empire were gathered here. There were even more factories here than those around Surging River Academy. When the sand ships reached this place, they would unload at the manufacturing factories, where the metal of heavenly yin would be refined. Qin Mu saw that numerous gigantic sunshot divine cannon components were already being constructed, though they weren't assembled yet. When he arrived at the manufacturing factory, someone from the Heavenly Saint Heavenly Works Hall came forward to welcome him. Qin Mu ordered them to bring forth the blueprints of the Sunshot Divine Cannon, and upon looking through it, he smiled. It has really been improved on by Grandpa Blind. He added the formation from the founding emperor era that borrowed the power of heaven and earth. This way, the Sunshot Divine Cannon can borrow power to float in the air, thus not requiring the consumption of too many medicinal stones. The disciple of Heavenly Works Hall said, "Cult Master, the Sunshot Divine Cannon needs to gather energy that is sufficient to kill devil gods in an instant, which will still require medicinal stones to activate the pill furnace, so as to allow it to shoot quickly." Qin Mu nodded and smiled. "Is Imperial Preceptor in River Tomb?" "Imperial Preceptor is not here, but there have been many guests from the different tribes here in River Tomb recently. They were heading there for a challenge." The disciple continued, "Apparently, they are young experts from the heavens of the north, and they are here to challenge." He glanced at Qin Mu, continuing carefully, "To challenge the Overlord Body of Eternal Peace. These experts have already blockaded the River Tomb Academy for over a dozen days. Heavens of the North, challenge the Overlord Body of Eternal Peace." Qin Mu was astonished. "Since when was I so famous?" The Heavenly Works Hall disciple was even more careful now. Small beads of sweat were even breaking out on his forehead. He replied, "I heard. I merely heard, so it must be taken with a grain of salt. I heard that Saint Woodcutter and Heavenly Teacher Shi paid a visit to the heavens of the north and announced unrestrainedly that there was an Overlord Body in eternal peace, who had fought across the realms unmatched. They even said that if one could defeat the Overlord Body of Eternal Peace in the same realm, the entire Eternal Peace Empire would surrender. I also heard that Saint Woodcutter made an unknown number of bets with the gods of the heavens of the north, making some pact of Little Earth count." Qin Mu was dumbstruck. It took him a while before he returned to his senses. "Shifting the conflicts onto me. Teacher is really, an old B** starred. However, I was just thinking of beating someone up." Part 343 and 344 end here. Thank you for watching.